So there's a lot of noise being made this week by the mainstream media that they have now coronated Joe Biden as the next president-elect. But as much as they try to sell their version of reality, it doesn't seem to be catching on with a greater population of America. People are seeing through it. And that's what we're talking about today on Americana On Newswatch. We're talking about the conservative paradigm shift that is happening. It's already happening now, and it will continue to happen in the coming years. And not even a temporary fraudulent presidential election can stop the momentum of the conservative paradigm shift that we are witnessing take place in America and around the world right now. Welcome to Americana X Newswatch. I'm Greg D, coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. If you're new to the show, welcome. If you've been here before, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. Also, share this video out to people in your network so we can continue to encourage a greater America, regardless of who is president. All right, so we're going to get right into this. This, time that we're in right now, it's been described several different ways. One of the ways it's been described is a reality war. And we're seeing it play out right in front of us right now. Who's going to capture the narrative? Who's going to win the war of which reality we live in? Sort of anecdotal this week, as soon as they announced that, as soon as the media coronated Joe Biden as the president-elect, they didn't even really coronate him. They called him the projected winner. So all he is the projected president-elect. Already he's got an office of president-elect. It's just so ridiculous, so dumb. At any rate, it does not surprise me that there is so much ridiculous activity around an announcement of a projection. So, anecdotally, as I was saying, this week I ran into one of the guys in my life that's a liberal. And I'm careful not to use the word friend because this person's not technically my friend. It's just someone I know, and they are a liberal. And he knows the position I hold. And he said to me when he was passing me, try not to feel too bad about losing. And I thought that was such an interesting thing to say, I said to him, I'm a really good winner. And I'm a really gracious loser as well. If, in fact, I'm going through a loss, which has not fully been established yet. Not to burst your bubble, but we don't actually know right now. So you might be prematurely celebrating. But this guy is one of those people. He's got full-on Trump derangement syndrome. And every time you talk to him, it's just all negativity all the time. You can't get through a conversation with a guy like this without him mentioning Donald Trump. It's just like this guy fully, his entire world revolves around what's happening in the mechanisms of politics at the very top of our government. It's like Donald Trump, look, Joe Biden might become president. We're all going to go to work. We're all going to do our jobs. We're all going to still function, even though Biden is president, right? And Donald Trump, same way. If he ends up getting reelected, we're all going to keep doing the things that we're doing here. Life doesn't just stop because the president that's in the office at that moment in time. Of course, we do believe that who is president can help sort of on a more meta level, sort of guide things towards the larger greatness of our nation. Of course, we want Donald Trump to win. But I'm not going to, take time to scream at the sky if my guy doesn't win. At any rate, we had a little conversation there, and the thing I walked away from when I was walking away from that particular guy is I think this is the first time I've ever seen him smile. Like the whole time I've known him, I'm like, that's a really weird thing. Like this guy, his negativity bias is so strong. I'm like, I wonder how long this positive moment's going to last for this guy. You know, a week, 2 weeks? I'm hoping we get 2 weeks. I'm like, I better have a lot of conversations with this guy in the next 2 weeks while he's positive and happy, because it's just going to be back to just all negativity all the time. You know, America's racist, America's homophobic, America's bad, it's xenophobic, it's the worst, Americans are terrible, we're a bad force in the world. Even if his president ends up getting into office, you know, and it just made me really sad for this guy. And I hate to think what's going to happen in 2 months from now if they are actually swearing in Donald Trump as, you know, the re-elected president of the United States of America. This guy's head's going to blow up, right? I mean, he's going to be one of the people screaming at the sky. At any rate, he's fully bought in on the reality that's being sold by the mainstream media. We also might describe the mainstream media as the mass media complex, right? But even the media decision, you know, even if it holds, because they are not able to detect all the fraud that took place at a massive enough level to flip the election for Donald Trump, the arc of history is still bending in the direction of a national populist right movement. It's not just here in America, it's happening around the world right now. And there's several authors and pundits and commentators that are pointing this out as we speak. There's another guy that I follow, Dr. Steve Turley. He has a lot of statistics. He's written several small books himself about this subject. And I probably in future episodes will quote out of some of his books so that we can start to look at and be encouraged by the reality of what's actually going on in the world. Not what we're being told by our mass media complex, but what is actually happening. At any rate, even if their decision holds or the projection that media made turns into a reality where Biden becomes president, the larger story of the time that we're in right now is that the conservative right is now winning the culture war. And ultimately, even if the Democrats win this presidential election, they've won this presidential election based on fraudulent means. Okay, so they've reached their end, they get to be president, but they've used fraudulent means to reach that end. They did not win on the strength of their ideas and their positions on issues. They had to have certain key people in certain key positions in different cities within certain specific states to be, in essence, bad actors, not do an honest vote count. That is how, if they do have their guy in office, they used that as their way of getting it done. So any lesson they learn from this, anything the media is telling you about how and why the guy won, it's going to be wrong. They're going to be learning the wrong lessons. They're going to walk away thinking that they have some sort of mandate on some level, but they have been handed no such mandate. In fact, if they would have listened to the will of the people, Donald Trump would have won in a landslide. My prediction would have been right. At any rate, if they were forced to win an election on their ideas, so if they were, in fact, forced to win on the strength of their positions on issues, they probably would not win an election now for another 30 years because the momentum has already shifted. I've talked about this in some of my videos called Zeitgeist on my channel. You can go back and watch maybe the first 3 episodes of my show. But particularly in the 3rd episode, I really dig in on this. This concept of there was the mass media or the mass society that was in charge of things for a long time. And the last time the culture war was won, it was the 60s rolling into the 70s. In the 70s, it was clearly the culture war was won by the left at that time. And they moved into positions of power in all of our institutions during that time. And that was the last time that we're really going to see totalitarian mass control top-down authority from one or two or three or a handful of centralized agencies. It's now we are moving into a network society where it's more decentralized conversations, decentralized control. It's getting more and more difficult to keep conversations from happening, keeping people from thinking and sharing thoughts that go against the mass media narrative. So the really big story is that conservative ideas are actually winning the culture war right now. That's big. It's really, really big. Because since we are in this time right now, and conservative ideas are winning the larger culture war, it's just a matter of time before that really catches up. I think what we're seeing is the last gasps of air, the last clawing for control by what Jordan Greenhall would refer to as the Blue Church. You can check out his stuff on Rebel Wisdom. He's given some really good lectures on that subject. I may mention him again here in this episode. But staying on point, what we need to tune into here is the larger story arc of our time. And that's what I want to point at here. I want us to really internalize that concept because it's really easy to get caught up in the moment. Oh man, I'm so bummed because truth didn't win in this election. Fraud won, you know? But even that is temporary. At any rate, whether Donald Trump is sworn in as the president or whether the Democrats are able to pull off their fraudulent tactics in order to win this presidency, the larger arc of history is to pay attention to the fact that the conservative ideas are now winning. When we have a debate in some forum, typically it's on the internet now because mainstream media won't even give the debate a chance. But when the debate is had, conservative ideas are winning. If you think about it this way, the liberals, if they didn't have fraud, they would not have won this election. And if they do pull off a win here, they simply got away with fraud to sway an election. They did not win by capturing the hearts and minds of Americans. I mentioned that before. I'm saying it a little more succinctly now. If there's one thing that Donald Trump did when he got elected as president in 2016, the first time he ran, he generated a new coalition. It was, of course, the Republican Party, but it started casting a wider net. And since 2016, it's grown. The support that's there for Donald Trump has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And we've really seen it in this election. If you look at the actual data of the groups and how they voted, the monolith that used to exist of like the gay vote must go this way, racial minority groups like Black, Hispanic, Latino, Cuban, whatever, however you want to break those groups out, they all would go just almost 100% Democrat. That's breaking apart now. More and more of these minority groups are thinking for themselves. So percentages of those groups are voting Republican now. So if there's one thing that we saw, it's a really big move, and it's consistent with this idea that the larger arc of history is that conservative ideas are winning more and more. It's that people, regardless of the tribe that they come from, they're beginning to break to the right. And that happened definitely in this election. You know, just the evidence that we see of gaining 15 more seats in the House and retaining control of the Senate. The Republican Party represents the right, you know, as imperfect as the Republican Party is. It represents the ethos of the right. And those ideas are connecting more with people regardless of their background or their race. As Dave Rubin said it, we are in a reality war right now. The old mass media world is trying like crazy to keep a lid on it and maintain control. as the control slips away from them slowly. Another way it was described is Tim from Timcast described the time that we're in as a propaganda war. And I think that there's some truth that we could glean from that. I don't know if I would use the word propaganda to describe it. I think I like reality war a little better than propaganda war, simply because propaganda suggests that we are trying to put a spin on things. Like both sides have got a ton of spin, and they're just trying to sell their spin. So one's going to spin, then one's going to spin reality, right? When the way that I see it is, there's one side that is very invested in their propaganda. And that mass media hierarchy that does not want to lose their grip on culture is pushing a very specific propaganda at the rest of the world, trying to get them to believe what they're telling them to believe. Whereas the other side is much more connected with freedom, decentralized communication, free to let people have the thoughts they have. We're not threatened by you feeling or thinking differently than we do. That is the conservative mindset. They don't mind having debates. Don't mind putting my ideas against your best ideas and let the best ideas win. So that's not propaganda. That's the opposite of propaganda, right? So one side is propaganda. The other side is, I will challenge your propaganda with factual reality, right? So I disagree with Tim a little bit. Most of the time I like what Tim says. I'm down with his content. In this particular case, I disagree a little bit. Not a big deal. There is the reality that the mainstream media, which is an extension of the liberal Democratic Party, is trying to sell you. And then there's the reality that is not being shaped by the mainstream media. And these two realities are at loggerheads. Obviously, we're seeing a battle right now for the presidency between these two sides. The way that I see it, if all things were even and we just would have counted the votes during this election, we wouldn't be in the position we're in now. It would have been a landslide victory for Donald Trump. A lot more of the states would have been red. But as I mentioned in a video last week, it's all about optics for the Democrats. So they'll do really bold things like commit voter fraud because there's no downside for them. They're protected completely by the mainstream media. So for them, in their minds, even if they don't win the presidency, might as well roll the dice on a fraudulent play, because at the very least, we make the map really confusing. So it doesn't just look red after election night, right? And then Donald Trump gets the optics of announcing, hey, I'm the winner again at the end of the night. They couldn't wait. They could not have that. They just had to stop counting. They literally just had to be like, let's go hide. They literally could not let Donald Trump have that win. So even if they don't win the presidency after all this nonsense, at least they didn't have to give him the optics of winning on election night. Anyways, go back and watch my video from last week if you want to hear more about that. Okay, so my opinion is Trump should have won this victory walking away, and I think he did, and I think that'll come to bear. But the dishonest, fraudulent activity of liberals has effectively sown the seeds of doubt for what could have been a true mandate victory for Trump, which actually could have set our country up for more unity and success. Isn't that funny? How the opportunity for unity that we actually had was by letting the election play out and count the votes as they came in. But the Democrats couldn't have it. So they are the party of disunity. They are the party of fighting unity. They've got to break it apart. They've got to keep you thinking the way they want you to think. They want their mass media that they've been in control of for the last 30, 40 years to tell you what to think. That's what we're witnessing right now. So there's some encouragement, from Dr. Steve Turley. I mentioned him a little earlier. Check out some of his content. Really positive guy. Looking at things through the lens of there is a rise of a new conservative age. That's something that I share in common with him, believing that there is a rise of a new conservative age happening right now. He mentioned the idea of moving from the mass society to the network society. The world of traditional media is being replaced by decentralized internet and social media. So that's kind of the point that he made. He did a live stream this Saturday. You can check that out. Or I think he mentioned again on one of his videos this week. Just look back over his videos for the last week. I don't have a link for you. And And then this also dovetails into what Jordan Hall, or Jordan Greenhall, if you can find him that way, in some of his lectures and articles that he's written. He points at it like this. He calls the mass media the broadcast TV era. And I think that's an interesting way to frame it or look at it, because I think that is true. There was the broadcast top-down authority that came from our elites that had a voice. And if you were one of those elites that made it on television, then you had a voice, and everybody else had to be in the audience and listen to you. That's the old paradigm. Okay, so that's a way to think about it. The old paradigm that was established by liberals, and they moved into positions of power in the 90%, in the 90th percentile of people in leadership roles in all those institutions, educational institutions. First, it started off as 3 television channels where we got all of our news, and then it ended up being like 52 channels total on cable, and some of those had some news, some didn't, right? But they still were able to control the messaging across 52 channels. That's not hard. Radio, magazines, newspapers. This is all olden days technology that would have backed up the mass media agreed upon reality, right? Okay, so new paradigm. This is what Jordan Hall would describe as internet era. No broadcast hierarchy, a decentralized communication infrastructure. And this would point to the way that Dr. Steve Turley was describing it as a network society, right? So how do we get our news today, right? If everyone can speak and everyone has a voice, then the people that are able to gain an audience in this new world, they become authorities. They become teachers. I could list 10 to 20 commentators, pundits that I watch regularly every week to get a more accurate look at the news and what's going on in the world than I would from the mainstream news. And I think you probably feel the same way if you're watching my show. It's really crazy the time that we live in, where you can go to people that have developed their own audiences with their own voice. This time of, no broadcast hierarchy. This time where anyone that has something to say can put it out through this new era of media, this internet era. Social media, websites, just all sorts of alternative tech, different ways of broadcasting. And there's no better example of this reality war that we're in right now, this mass media or mass society versus network society battle happening, then if you just look at what happened in the last weekend, I think they've completely jumped the shark at this point. Mass media has lost their minds. I mean, look at what we just saw on Friday and Saturday. Mainstream media, they project Joe Biden as president-elect. It's just a projection. So ridiculous. Immediately, they fly into action. They spin up all sorts of activity on all the mainstream media news outlets all day long. They're talking about how he won, why he won, what Donald Trump did wrong, what Joe Biden did right. It's nonsense. It's all madness, right? But that is the narrative that our mass media is committed to. So what do they do on Saturday night? They have like some kind of big event. It's an event that does not ring true. It feels very phony as you're watching it. I suppose the people that really bought in on their sense of reality would buy in. But it just looked like a really big, silly circus. It looked more like reality television than it did just like a real event, right? It looked like something they were putting, you could feel the veneer they were putting on it. You could feel, it was slick television production. It looked like an event. But if you're one of the 71 million Americans that voted for Donald Trump, you know that there's lawsuits, there's litigation that's being filed right now, 2 days before this event happened. And we know the reality of the situation is, it's possible, yes, this guy's going to be the president-elect, but he's not yet. That hasn't been decided. So to do an event where you got a guy speaking as if he's already that, and he's got like a sign behind him, it's like Office of President-elect. So dumb. Office of President-elect. Oh, whoever thought of that idea is such an idiot. And it really does show this is how desperate mass media is to keep control of the narrative. They want you so invested. Look, if there was any doubt that this guy is president-elect, let us put your doubt to rest. He's got a sign behind him, folks. It's got an eagle on it. And it says office of. Oh, he's got an office of it. Well, shoot. That makes it even more official. To me, I saw this as just one more reason that the conservative paradigm shift will not be stopped at this point. Not even by the mass media complex that has cooked up another narrative based on another fraudulent claim or another fraudulent narrative that they've put in place, in essence, to try to sell us the reality that they want us to live in. This time it happens to be in the form of an election. But we saw this all through 2020. I guess you could say they've already jumped the shark multiple times, even before this election. But this election, this is really over the top. I mean, fake news taken to a whole nother level. But, you know, all through 2020, it was one event right after another that was fraudulent, fake, unreal, and the mainstream media was fully sold on the whole line of narrative that they were trying to pitch us. You know, what was it, Rachel Maddow? She spent like 3 years of her show talking about Russian collusion. That was always unreal. It was always fake. So just think about it. They're doing the same thing right now with this president-elect nonsense. The same thing they did with so let's not have too short a memory on this whole thing. Let's remember what we saw in the last 3 years or 4 years even. But particularly in 2020, it went from the Russian collusion into Brett Kavanaugh being a bad guy and a bunch of lies about him, a bunch of fraud they were trying to sell based on that guy. And then it went to fake impeachment based on a nothing burger phone call. This is all fraud after fraud after fraud being sold by a mass media that is nervous that they are losing grip on the cultural narrative. They are losing the culture war now. They can sense it. It's an existential crisis for them, and all they can do is commit more fraud to keep a lid on it. But that's why I think we as conservatives can take a breath, take a step back, stay encouraged. It's going to be all right, regardless of how this thing goes right here. I think that ultimately what we are looking at here is the conservative paradigm shift that cannot be stopped by a fraudulent election. Stay encouraged, everybody. The larger arc of history that we are witnessing, that we are living in right now, is a good one. This is the rise of a new conservative age, even if there's a bit of a speed bump or a hiccup in it. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with my assessment here? Do you believe, as I do, that we are in the middle of a conservative paradigm shift? Let me know in the comment section below. This has been another episode of Americana X Newswatch. I'm Greg D, coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. We will see you next time.